I swear, one of these days I'll remember to turn off the auto sleep on my Switch. Hey Squiggles, how are you doing? How have you been the last... I forget if you were... Were you here yesterday? I forget if you were here yesterday or if you were not here yesterday. All of my days blend together. Oh gosh, I forgot. I forgot how I do these. Miss the ping playing Elden Ring. Oh, Squiggles, did you see that I'm most of the way done with the books now? I haven't posted an update today, but I did a full book and most of a second book today. So I have the last little bit, which is like 1 enemy, 3 fates, and 1 dungeon, I think. And then I have 2 more books to do. The day before you decided to try to be healthy and go to bed before midnight.
The man who claimed to be an inspector that day was definitely not this man.
He's right, see? You think we would forget these grand lips, huh?
I never leave Fresno Street, alright? I've no interest in any Redhead League. I'm all alone in the world, me. Have no kinfolk or nothing. Why would I be involved in something like that? Just look at me, eh? Does it look like I could carry off a disguise with a face like this? Would certainly appear that we have the wrong man. Got the papers from your from the courthouse yesterday for your name change stuff.
What I've been telling you, huh? There was no need for this pointless testimony.
That's right. It's a simple peddler, remember? There's no streets, all I know. How would I have come by a police inspector's identification book, eh? Well, yes, that's hard to explain, but... Brief cross-examination, I think, counsel. Very brief. Weaseled your way out of work tomorrow? Isn't there anyone in this courtroom who thinks I might be onto something?
I stand steadfastly by your side as always, Mr. Nadahodo.
Also, for once, prepared your mind for eye couple. Funny enough, this first testimony didn't have any eye capo in it. Banana. Pressing might, but the actual testimony itself didn't have any of it in it.
The man who claimed to be an inspector that day was definitely not this man.
Hold it! Also, I feel like my voices are significantly more on point than they usually are at the start of stream. So you say, but how can you be quite so certain? You missed it? Why?
There is no need to hurt your hands on the desk, monsieur. Surely the reason is obvious, no? Because I have never before seen lips like this.
Nevertheless, there's a clear red mark around Mr. Gossip's neck. And it looks very much like that left behind on the... Oh. And it looks very much like that left behind on the neck of your colleague by your prized collar.
Mon Dieu, with your words, it is like you tried to wring my neck.
It does look very much like my neck, though, aye?
Oh no, this is a birthmark, lad. These lips in London and a neck to die for. Aye, they broke the mold when they made me.
And for the first time in my life, I feel lucky to have been born with red hair.
Did that come through all right? that come through all right, or did that come through really quiet? I just like looked over off to the side, and the peak on my audio readout was like really low, and I was like, wait, what? Surely the prosecutors must have yaoi hands at the end of court cases because of how swollen they get after slamming them on the desk over and over again. You should take a look, Banana. Unironically, you should take a look at the sprites from the first Ace Attorney, because Edgeworth and Phoenix have yaoi hands. Like, their hands are so big in their original sprite art. Like, I genuinely think that their hands are bigger than their head in some poses. I thought being Japanese made you stand out in London. So you maintain that you've never seen this man before.
Oui.
This is like "say sa," right? I don't have the pronunciation from someone. Well, even outside of that, their shoulders are massive compared to like the size of their head. The scale on the Ace Attorney, like 1 through 4 sprites, is just, it's stylized, but it's stylized in such a way where like a lot of the characters either have really slim shoulders or really wide shoulders. And they either have really tiny hands or really big hands. Say sa.
Oui, c'est ça. I swear to it that by the flames of my hair.
So fierce pride has outgrown the frustration with your hair now, has it?
He's right, see? You think we would forget these grand lips, huh?
Hold it! Well, yes. I don't imagine I'll forget those lips in a hurry. I'm sorry. We're not even 10 minutes into stream, but this is an out of context quote, like waiting to happen. Get the spray bottle. Well, yes. I don't imagine I'll forget those lips in a hurry either.
That is what I'm saying. For some reason, it makes me want to eat. How did Fabian call it? An eclair.
Sorry, give me a sec.
You know, I've never seen the hair as black as yours before either.
Likewise, I've never seen red hair like yours until I came to Britain.
See, maybe it's a national trait, huh? Maybe all the people from this man's country have the grand lips.
Oh lad, I was born right here in Fresno Street, and I've never left.
That is a problem, see? But that is the problem.
So you definitely didn't go to the park on Lime Street that day, Mr. Gossip.
Now, how many times do you want me to say it, eh?
I never leave Fresno Street, alright? I've no interest in any Redheaded League. That just feels like an outright lie. Wait a minute, how do we have 5 checks? I thought that I presented something by accident at the start of this chunk of cross-examination. Hold it! Also, can I just say, it's definitely an odd choice for, because, Ace Attorney 2 and 3, and I think 4, I want to say 4, 5, and 6 as well, all have like a bar that, like, they have a bar that ticks down rather than a finite amount of check marks. So, like, some mistakes only cost you like a tiny chunk of the bar, and some mistakes cost you like a massive chunk of the bar. And it's just an interesting choice for them to go back to the 5 strike system after they made the bar system afterward. So you'd heard of the Redheaded League, have you? Had you? Get a name like Gossip for nothing, eh? It's my business to know what's going on in town. He's had like 15 different voices. Sold that tasty bit of, or that tasty tidbit to a few fair few redheads that came past me. It's between us. I got a sandwich to cough up for it.
Well, he does have a very red nose, if that counts.
Who knows? As you can see, my own hair's not got a hint of red in it. In any case, Fresno Street's my patch. Won't catch me sliding off to any other part of town. No, sir, not likely.
Excuse me.
Well, it's essentially, I don't know if I'm doing a good job of describing it, but you get like the 5 things up in the corner that represent like your health. And if you make 5 mistakes, then you game over. But in some of the Ace Attorney games, they were like, okay, rather than having, 5 strikes you're out, it's you have a gauge that it's just once the gauge is empty, you're out. And so, if you make mistakes, it'll take chunks off of the gauge, but some things have bigger consequences than just one tiny chunk of the gauge. Like, it would be equivalent to like losing 2 or 3 of your HP in this game. Mr. DeRusso.
Oui. Can I help you?
Did Mr. Gossip's words just now lead you to remember something relevant, perhaps?
It was the other day, when I was looking for a place near the park. A small house or something.
To be the headquarters of the Redheaded League, yes.
I visited an housing agent.
I read that as ousting.
I visited an housing agent on Lime Street, and there I saw him. This man was paying money to the agent.
What? Mr. Gossip? The housing agent?
Oui. He had some kind of contract in his hand, and they were clearly discussing terms.
No. Mistaken, chum. Never left Fresno Street, me, like I said before. You've mistaken me for someone else. Someone with the same face.
No, the capo's right. I remember it too. He was paying the man with the banknotes.
With notes.
Like I said, that wasn't me.
I was curious why this man with the dirty clothes had so much money. And so I looked at the name on the papers.
And what name was written? Mr. Gossip. Or Mr. Gossip? Oh, wait. It's gonna be, Hugh Boone. That's my guess. It's gonna be Hugh Boone, because he's the guy that would own the flat that Gregson was killed in.
No. This man, he lies. He tells you that he has no name. But in fact, his name is Hugh Boone, huh? It's better than Mr. Gossip, I think. See?
No. peddler of tidbits of information, like I said, on Fresno Street, and that's that. I don't much like folk talking about my personal life.
Indeed. And it's not the intention of the court to invade the privacy of the witness. Very well, I shall respect your wishes, sir. Aforementioned name shall be redacted from all court records of this trial, assuming no objections.
Objection!
I'm sorry, my lord, but the defense does object. Because the name just mentioned has a very deep significance to this case.
Lord gracious. You similarly object, Professor Asogi. Prosecutor Asogi.
As it happens, my lord, that particular name has already been mentioned during today's proceedings.
I never. What capacity?
Hugh Boone. The name of the leaseholder on the room.
Let me put this very simply. The victim's body was discovered in your rented room. I suggest, sir, that you start talking. Well, alright. I suppose that might be the case, So your real name is Hugh Boone? Well, just between us, I'd like to blow my own trumpet, but there's no finer peddler of tidbits in town. So I happen to be able to afford the grubby little room in a falling down backstreet townhouse.
Why is Kazuma the prosecutor? Because, Van Zeeks is the defendant. We're defending Van Zeeks currently.
Two? Once every 6 months, I go and pay the rent to the agent on Lime Street. I remember now. There were 2 vulgar redheads in there last time.
Aye, if either of us is a vulgar, it's not a me.
Why is Kazuma prosecuting him? Because, Kazuma has a bit of a vendetta against Van Zeeks currently, because Van Zeeks is the one that prosecuted his father and got him convicted in the professor case 10 years ago.
And sink again, Peppino. Why didn't you bring this up before? It's like I told you already. I don't like talking about my personal life. I'm a tidbit peddler as far as everyone else is concerned. No fuss.
We'll update your testimony to include this most surprising revelation, Mr. Boone.
I must. The leaseholder Scotland Yard has been looking for since the body was discovered. It's been here under our noses all along.
Yeah, he was the masked guy with Van Zeeks. Effectively, the stolen waxwork from Madame Two Spells essentially illegally made a mold of the actual criminal's face for accuracy, because that's like their whole thing, is that they, you know, they used to be known for making stuff of like dead royals and all that, and that's where they got their start. So effectively, after the trial, Van Zeeks got the key from Madame Two Spells, unlocked the helmet on the thing, and when the masked dude saw it, he's like, oh shit, like, I remember now, that's my dad. And that's when he took off his mask. Hi. I rent the room where that fellow was found. It's true, for what difference it makes. How did Hugh's lip get like that? Probably got punched in the face. That's my guess. Either that, or it's just, you know, an Ace Attorney character design. It's just like that. Hold it! So, you live in that room, presumably, do you? No, I don't live there. What do you think? No bed, is there? It's just a desk. Then why would you want to rent it? Well, I don't think I should have to say, really. Then how about the notice board in there? Hugh does have a very punchable face. Which was covered from top to bottom in confidential documents only the police should have had access to. No, that board's not mine. Inspector must have brought it along. It's only the other bits and bobs that belong to me. Desk and the chair and that. People don't generally carry enormous notice boards around with them. The real question is, why was Inspector Gregson killed there in your room? Well, obviously, I have not the faintest idea. I mean, it's causing me no end of bother, to be honest.
It seems to me that Mr. Gossip, sorry, Mr. Boone, would rather as little known about his room as possible for some reason.
Yes, it does come across that way. More importantly, knowing that the scene of the crime is actually his room completely changes things. In particular, there's one part of his testimony that's really bothering me now. That's how I'm finally going to undo this man. I think it's this.
Objection!
Oh.
Hold it!
Oh, wait. Alone in the world, me? No kinfolk or nothing. Why would I be involved in something like that? You mean you have no family? No, none at all. I spent my days on Fresno Street, peddling tidbits to passersby. Hoping, just between us, this is. Eventually someone else with lips like mine will come along.
I don't think so.
You may be right. Anyway, that mark on your neck is just too much of a coincidence for us to ignore. Well, what's a fella to do then, eh? You don't believe me, we're at an impasse. There's nothing I can do but flick my lip. It's like I'm not gonna get anywhere here unless I can produce some proof. You're basically saying I got dressed up and posed as some fancy inspector, aren't you? Well, it's beyond me to think... beyond me how you think I could do that. Just look at me, eh? Look like I could carry off a disguise with a face like this?
Hold it!
You could. Say, with a mustache or a beard to cover that lip? Aye, perhaps. I was going to stick some fake facial hair on to cover up this face specimen. I'd end up looking like his lordship over there, wouldn't I? Pardon? I assure you, my lips are entirely unremarkable. I would ask you not to cast such scrutinizing looks in my direction, Counsel. Sorry, my lord. Imagination got the better of me there.
Well, Inspector Gregson did wear a mustache, of course.
You're right, he did. So perhaps he was hiding something himself. Barely have hidden a crumble in a mustache of that size.
And anyway, the detective we spoke with had no facial hair at all.
See, the capo is right. He was a clean-shaven.
Certainly seems beyond the realms of possibility that this witness could have disguised himself as the victim.
Aye, it does and it is.
It's the extent of their testimony, isn't it?
What's your feeling, Mr. Naruhodo?
Well, what Mr. Boone says is undeniable. It would be all but impossible to hide those lips with any form of disguise.
Perhaps, yes. But nevertheless, the mark around his neck is equally undeniable. And it's identical to the one that Mr. DeRossi suffered.
Yes, that's true. But why does this whole disguise idea just keep playing on my mind? Okay, I'm gonna save.
Objection!
Really? I do think, like...
Objection!
Oh? So, is this guy actually Mr. Vigil?
Hold it!
Okay. So, you live in that room, presumably? Oh, I don't live there. What do you think? There's no bed there, just a desk. Rent it. I should have to say, really? Notice board. Covered from top to bottom in confidential documents that only the police should have access to. Inspector must have brought it along. There's other bits and bobs that belong to me. Desk and the chair mat. Just come across that way, and more importantly... knowing the scene of the crime is actually his room completely changes things. In particular, there's one part of his testimony that's really bothering me now. One part of his testimony that's really bothering me. See, this feels like it should. Oh, I'm dumb.
Objection!
I'm dumb. Okay, that makes sense. It's him saying, "Oh, I don't have any family," and you're supposed to present the picture of his wife because he's Mr. Vigil. Okay. You have no kinfolk, as you put it. And explain why it is that among the sparse furnishings, we found this photograph in the room. Yeah. I presume, as you've been renting the room, that this photograph belongs to you, does it not? Oh, well... Mr. Boone, drop the pretense. Tell the court exactly who you really are. I don't know what you mean. I'm a peddler, I keep telling you so. You really don't need to bother with me. Please, just leave it alone. As the man says, leave it alone. Whatever the truth is about this man's life, it has no bearing on this case. Because it is simply not possible that he impersonated Inspector Gregson.
Objection!
How can you be so sure? Just look at the man. No amount of disguise can ever hide those unmissable features.
Objection!
But what if we were to look at this the other way around? What do you mean? Miss Counsel, what do you mean? Well, there's no denying that Mr. Boone's lip is very prominent indeed. But consider the possibility that his prominent lip is itself part of an elaborate disguise. Then hiding that prominent feature, in other words, revealing his true face, would make an utterly impenetrable disguise. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Hugh Boone? Have a good night, Squiggles. Good. A witness? Are you still hiding the truth from this court?
If that's his disguise, then... underneath it, his true identity must be...
Yes, that's right. There's really only one person he could really be. My lord, the defense believes that it can reveal Mr. Boone's true identity to the court. No, please, no. Very well then, counsel. What is the true identity of this peddler who goes simply by the name of Gossip on the street?
Take that!
Your real name is actually Mr. Vigil, isn't it? Mr. Dally Vigil.
Yeah.
Don't recall that name, counsel. Who is that? Who is this Mr. Vigil? It's a name I encountered yesterday, my lord. It has to do with a certain client of Mr. Herlock Sholmes. A young gentlewoman came to find the detective, asking him to locate her missing husband. The woman in this photograph, in fact, this is Mrs. Vigil. What? From what I understand, you haven't returned home since the night before the inspector was found dead. But of course, on that night, you were being held captive by the two Redheaded League men. And last night, you were put up by the prosecution service in preparation for testifying in this trial. Because we'd been led to believe that you, Miss Venus, and Mr. Sandwich were all homeless. Being important witnesses in this case, we needed to know where we could find you, of course. That explains why you've not only been unable to return home, but also unable to contact your wife. Who's been beside herself with worry, waiting for you at the Vigil residence. No, just you hold on a minute. I don't have the first idea what I'm talking about. Really? It's a simple enough matter to confirm my suspicions. All we have to do is pull off that disguise.
No, please.
Bailiff, bring soap, a sponge, and a washbowl at once. Mr. DeRosso and Mr. DeRossi, you will restrain the witness.
Oui, my lord.
Oui, my lord. No, stop. Get off, please.
Waterboarding in court.
Don't.
Well, we are now seeing your true features, I presume. That was a fast costume change. Lift your head, sir, so the court can see your face. It would appear that the defense counsel's assertion was entirely correct. This has all been been a very elaborate deception. The witness, tell the court, have you seen this man before?
I don't believe it, but...
See, there is no question. This is the inspector we saw in the park.
Extraordinary. On the day of the Redheaded League enrollment, Maddie needed a sip of water. The man claiming to be Inspector Gregson, who appeared before Mr. DeRosso and Mr. DeRossi in the park, was you, disguised as the inspector. Or rather, was you posing as the inspector and no disguise at all. Mr. Vigil was formerly employed as the chief warder at Barclay Prison. Chief warder? Your career had promise. Why would you quite possibly have become, why you would quite possibly have become the future governor of the prison? So, what on earth have you been doing peddling tittle-tattle on Fresno Street? Well, it's been 10 years since Mr. Vigil worked at the prison. 10 years.
I'm really dreadfully sorry about all this. Yes, it's true. I am Dally Vigil.
You were the chief warder at Barclay Prison 10 years ago. So where did Mr. Hugh Boone come from?
Boone is... the other me. It's the name I invented.
Well, evidently there's a great deal under the surface here.
I'll explain everything. I'll tell you just how wretched my life has become. As you say, it was 10 years ago now that my employment as Barclay's chief warder came to an end. Having left the prison service, I searched for some new occupation by which to earn a wage. But times were hard in London, and I found no suitable engagements at all. In desperation one day, I turned my hand at selling wares on Fresno Street.
But your wife appears to know nothing of this. She still maintains that you're the chief warder at Barclay Prison.
I was utterly determined that my wife should not know of my failings, which is why I never told her. I opened an account at the bank under the name of Hugh Boone, and I rented the cheapest room I could find on Fresno Street.
Scene of the very crime we're investigating.
Yes, that's right. The place from which I could emerge every morning at 8 as a squalid peddler, and transform myself back every evening at 5 into a well-dressed man about town before returning home. Quickly became my daily routine.
I was puzzled by the lack of furniture in the room. But that explains it. But why on earth didn't you just tell us this in the first place?
I have a wife, sir, and 2 sons. And without wishing to sound self-conceited, they regard me with some pride. I couldn't bring myself to disappoint them.
So instead, you decided to conceal your occupation from them?
Yes. I've made such a terrible mess of everything.
Still, one thing doesn't add up. No matter how many tidbits of information you could sell to passing gentlemen, even at 6 pence apiece, you couldn't hope to match the salary you must have commanded as a chief warder at the prison.
Very true. You've kept your family in comfort, despite 10 years of somewhat misbegotten employment. That was all thanks to Inspector Gregson.
What? Inspector Gregson? What on earth?
It was some years earlier, or some years after I'd invented Boone, and begun my other life as a street seller. He, the inspector that is, recognized me one day.
And to say, victim was an acquaintance of yours?
I knew him from my time working at the prison. When he saw what I'd become, he was deeply troubled for me and my family. From that day forward, he visited me on Fresno Street with increasing regularity. Then one day, he asked me if I would carry out a secret assignment for him.
A secret? What was it?
It was to impersonate the inspector.
What? Impersonate him?
We always met in that little room so the inspector could brief me.
Visit Orcsey's tomorrow and take a statement from the proprietress.
It was always something along those lines. Surveillance work, interviewing people. On those occasions, he would lend me his identification so people would believe who I was. My instructions were to make an impression, to let people know that Inspector Gregson had been at work. And for those services, he compensated me financially.
Scotland Inspector willingly relinquished his identification into your care with intent to deceive. That, as I'm sure I need not point out, very serious criminal offense. But why? What was the point of you impersonating him?
I truthfully do not know. All I can say is that the inspector warned me on numerous occasions.
Now remember, Vigil, need your solemn word. Don't blab about this to anyone, alright? Ever. Even if, well, hand up a croaker.
In time, he started to bring papers with him to the room as well. It became something of a second office for him.
We're just uncovering a whole-ass conspiracy here. You know, as you do, but... This is fairly standard stuff for Ace Attorney, but still. So, in fact, the person who declared himself to be Inspector Gregson at the park on Lime Street was really... Yes, it was me, acting on the inspector's orders. As usual, I removed my boon disguise, and then went as instructed to the park, armed with the inspector's identification book. It never occurred to me that the bruise on my neck might give me away. Well, it would seem this confession completely destroys the defense's case. Explain yourself, Prosecutor Asogi. My learned friend's assertion was as follows. The victim was killed at another location on the day before his corpse was discovered. At the hands of these two Redheaded League men when they imprisoned the inspector. But no, that can't be. After all, it wasn't the inspector who went to the park that day. It was me.
Oh, goodness.
Finally, we have clarity.
We had nothing to do with the murder of the inspector.
And merci, Monsieur la Défense, for proving it. What? Ah! Order! 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 Indeed, it would appear that we have reached the de facto conclusion of sorts. The witnesses had no involvement in the murder of the victim. As proven, somewhat ironically, by the defense. Yeah. Hereby call an end to the cross-examination.
Hold it!
Pardon me, my lord, but with your permission, I'd like to pose one further question to the witness. Zuma? What question, counsel? It concerns the events of 10 years ago. I believe you would have been present at a very significant execution that was carried out at the time. 10 years ago? Execution of the professor, Genshin Asogi. I want to know exactly what your involvement was. Oh. Can I just say, I really love that they managed to work, like, Kazuma's theme into his, like, prosecution music. Oh. Answer me, man. One moment, counsel. It's related to the current case. Sorry. All of a sudden, my throat's decided it doesn't want to agree with me. Feel like I got something stuck in the back of it. Naturally. It's the prosecution's belief that this case and the events of 10 years ago are inextricably linked. Friends concur, counsel. Kazuma, you're not yourself. Not as calm and collected as usual.
Poor Kazuma-sama. No wonder he's acting this way. Mr. Vigil's memories of what happened 10 years ago would tell the tale of Genshin Asogi's last moments. His own father's.
I know. I do understand that. Even so. Prosecutor Asogi. Do you genuinely believe that this question requires an answer in order to learn the truth behind Inspector Gregson's death? Need you to trust me, please. Very well. Then the defense has no objection. I see. In that case, you will answer the question, witness.
The truth is, I remember very little of that time.
You've forgotten.
I'm sorry to say, yes. As I said, I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago. But for some particular reason, my memory of the events leading up to that moment is extremely hazy.
Does that not strike you as strange, Mr. Naruhodo?
Sorry? Yeah, because he didn't resign. He was let go.
Well, 10 years is a long time. But to have forgotten the reason why he left such an important job?
Yes, you're right. Not only that, Mr. Vigil's claim contradicts what we already know. Human spirit is a fragile thing. It's broken all too easily. Which is why we have a tendency to wrap it up for protection.
I'm sorry. The human spirit. I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean.
When we experience pain and suffering that we feel unable to bear, block it out, obliterate it from our memories, seal it away. But it never truly leaves us. If the seal is broken, the memories resurface. And when they do, the fragile spirit may finally be crushed.
But I really don't...
Kazuma-sama.
But if it must be crushed, then so be it, because the truth will not stay buried. It's coming out, one way or another. Right. Now I understand. It's clear what his intentions are. He means to expose the truth, at any cost. Perhaps if I pointed out the contradiction in what Mr. Vigil claimed earlier, it might cause some crucial memories to return to him. Should I? Should I present that evidence or not? That save. Dead, cool. I have no idea how this is going to go, but this is a court of law, and I have a duty to pursue the truth. Mr. Vigil, I'd like you to take a look at this. Evidence that clearly contradicts your version of events.
Take that!
Just a few moments ago, you made the following statement. I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago.
Well, yes.
In other words, you claim to have left the post of Chief Warder of your own volition.
Well, yes, of course. Why?
Tell me. Do you remember seeing this document before?
No, I don't.
This is a dismissal notice ordering the immediate termination of a prison staff member's employment. Dismissal notice. And the name on the notice is yours, Mr. Vigil.
What? It's mine?
So you didn't resign from the prison service at all. For some reason, you were dismissed as Chief Warder from Barclay.
No, there's been some mistake. I'm sure. I'm sure I tendered my resignation. This dismissal notice is nonsense. Isn't it?
You were forcibly dismissed. There must have been good reason. Clearly, did something. Mr. Vigil, it's time to break the seal and have you remember. According to the few remaining records, final execution that you supervised was on the 17th of June, 10 years ago. On that day, something very serious took place at Barclay Prison.
17th June?
What was that? The professor's execution.
Professor.
As you were the Chief Warder at the time, it stands to reason that you would have been present throughout the proceedings.
It does sound familiar.
And yet, that execution never took place. The convict, ostensibly executed earlier that day, later re-emerged from his grave.
A convict came back to life.
A cemetery in the middle of the night. There was a witness.
However, the witness claims that a moment after he saw the convict clambering out of his grave, a gunshot rang out from over his shoulder, and the bullet pierced the professor's chest, killing him instantly. Those may have been the professor's actual last moments.
Yes.
Seeing as you were in charge of overseeing executions at the time, you must know the truth about what really happened. It's in your head, somewhere deep down. Well, Chief Warder Daily Vigil, know there are memories in your head that that can explain what happened on the 17th of June, 10 years ago. Now it's time for you to drag them up. Mr. Vigil?
Yes. The whole prison. It was complete chaos. The prisoner escaped. He was killed in the cemetery. The shocking news ripped through Barclay like a hurricane. What? Order! 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 You mean to say, Mr. Vigil, that your memories of the time have returned? My head, it's like some floodgates have been opened. The images, screams.
Oh my goodness.
The papers. There were reports, articles about a man who'd seen a ghost. Yes, Enoch Drebber. But surely those reports were exaggerated. There were traces at the scene.
Traces of what?
In Lowgate Cemetery, at plot number 139. Blood. Lots of blood.
Hey, Lobster, how are you doing?
That's where the man was buried, of course. Obviously, something terrible had happened there. The depths of conspiracy and depravity from which this tale is emerging are quite staggering. I've reviewed the police records from that time extensively, and a thorough investigation was conducted by Scotland Yard to ascertain how the convict managed to escape in the first place. And the conclusion reached by the investigating team was that a member of the prison staff must have been involved. You're suggesting a prison warder abetted the man's bid for freedom? Yes, and I was suspected of doing it. Of using that mass murderer's execution as a way to help him escape. Did what? Remember now, the horror of it all is coming back to me. One evening, a few days after the execution, some detectives came to the prison. I was called to the governor's office at the top of the watchtower. Sorry, Telly. This is serious business. Can I help you now? Chief Warder, you were responsible for overseeing the execution before, eh? Well, it seems the fellows at Scotland Yard want to have a few wee words with you about it. Better pack your things, laddie. And in person. As soon as he told me that, my mind just went completely blank. And the next thing I knew, The professor, the most hated killer in our country's history. I let him escape. I'm finished. My life is over. Order! Bailiff, fetch a doctor at once! Orders adjourned for today with immediate effect.
So, with Mr. Vigil's collapse, proceedings came to an abrupt end for the day. Once again overshadowed by the legacy of that notorious killer, appearing like a cursed ghost ship on a foggy ocean. Lord Van Zeeks, Mr. Vigil, Kazuma, and Gregson. All of them bound by invisible chains anchored to the same wreckage in the murky depths of the past. But the miraculous light that had been trying to cut through the gloom and shine on those tragic events was playing on the edges of the truth at last.
is there to investigate? Still can't quite believe what just happened.
I know. I inquired with the bailiff after the court session was adjourned. And it seems Mr. Vigil was taken to the hospital to recover.
Right. 10 years ago now, Mr. Vigil attempted to commit suicide by jumping out of the window of the prison governor's office. Ever since then, he's completely blocked the memory of those events from his mind. Nobody knew his secret. Not his family, not even the man himself, but I forced it out into the open. Was it wrong of me to do that? Did I overstep the mark, I wonder?
Reno!
Oh, Iris.
You were miles away. Anyway, I brewed a fresh pot of soothing tea for you.
Oh, thank you.
You and Susie have had an exhausting day so far, haven't you? Oh. Thank you, Iris. How thoughtful of you.
Do you happen to know where Mr. Sholmes is? When we came out of the courtroom back into the defendant's antechamber, he disappeared.
Oh, no, I don't know. He just suddenly sprang to his feet and left. All he said was, "I must leave." I wonder if he's pursuing the mystery of Inspector Gregson's death. Well, you know what Hurley's always saying, don't you? There are mysteries in this world that should perhaps never be solved. And for the construction of a solution comes only at the expense of the destruction of something else.
What does that mean?
He knows very well that when you open someone else's old wounds, you often open your own too. But he just can't take his own advice and leave well alone. Solving mysteries is too important to him.
That's so true.
But that's what I like about Hurley, after all.
I suppose that's the lot of the great detective in some ways.
So then, let's have tea, and then I'll give you a hand.
Oh, do you have time, Iris?
Yes, I finished this month's manuscript at last, with barely a day to spare before the deadline. Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. A brand new story to read in the adventures of Herlock Sholmes. You know, I always hide Hurley's violin in the days before I have the deadline.
You do? Mr. Sholmes.
I'm sure that's very wise, Iris. How sensible of you. Now then, my dear fellows, let's make a plan of action before we continue our investigation.
You know, I don't know if it's just me, but it feels like Iris hasn't really had a whole lot. Like, she's just kind of popped in and out, like, occasionally. Like, she doesn't have as many lines as she did previously in the first game.
And so, how did it go in court this morning?
Oh, we still don't know the truth about what really happened. But one thing's increasingly clear. Lord Van Zeeks definitely didn't do it.
Oh, goody. Yes, that's right. We managed to uncover several new facts as well. Oh, really?
And another development too. Kazuma.
Yes, it's quite clear now that Kazuma-sama is not himself. The way he's acting, it's almost as if he's possessed.
No. I mean, at the end of the proceedings earlier, it was like a bloodhound the way he was chasing down Mr. Vigil's forgotten past. It's not normally so mercilessly persistent. What's going on in his head, I wonder? We only need to sit down with Kazuma and try to understand what he's going through. Whoops.
Vigil, you say? Isn't that the name of the lady who came to visit Hurley yesterday? That's right. To ask Mr. Sholmes if he would help her to find her missing husband.
And Mr. Sholmes completely passed the buck to us. Actually, didn't you say that Mr. Vigil had been taken to the hospital? Do you know which one?
Ah, it's St. Sinner's. There's only one hospital in all of London, Ryunosuke.
Starting to wonder if all the other hospitals in London have closed down. I didn't even read that when I said that. Like, I'm glad that the game is self-aware of it, but...
But that's amazing, Runo. You found the lady's husband already.
Well, I suppose I have. By accident.
And 10 years ago, while Mr. Vigil was the chief warder at the prison, he was responsible for overseeing the professor's incarceration. No.
So when the convict escaped, he was held responsible and immediately dismissed.
And sometimes I really don't want to grow up.
More, for 10 years after that, while he was ostensibly working as a peddler, he also had another secret job. He was paid by Gregson to be his stand-in, to impersonate the inspector.
To impersonate Gregsy? But why?
Absolutely no idea.
Ginny was right. I'm starting to think all adults are up to no good now. Including you, Runo.
Haven't paid anyone to impersonate me.
That means he has ties to the professor and to Inspector Gregson, though. So I do think we ought to pay a visit to Mr. Vigil, don't you?
Back to St. Sinner's, then. If Gregson really was murdered the day before his body was discovered, then Lord Van Zieks has to be innocent, you see?
What? The day before? Well, that should be easy enough to work out. Just by examining the corpse, surely. Yes, you would expect so. But curiously, no time of death was included in the autopsy report. That is curious.
Still unanswered questions about Lord Van Zieks, though, aren't there?
Do you mean...
I mean, what he was doing here on Fresno Street that day in the first place.
Well, according to the man's testimony, he said he was investigating Inspector Gregson, didn't he?
Turns out that little room was actually the inspector's secret office.
Oh, that sounds like it has all the markings of a wonderfully devilish plot.
And why was that notice board in there covered in all those particular papers? Papers about cases with a link to the Reaper. Starting to get a bad feeling about all this.
Oh dear, that sounds more like something horribly devilish. We must start by looking into Inspector Gregson's movements of late.
Never imagined I might have to be investigating the inspector's movements.
Well, according to the entry in his diary, he was carrying out an incognito investigation of the Redheaded League the day before his death. Oh, you mean he was doing the same as Hurley?
Well, Mr. Sholmes was trying to apply, whereas the inspector was supposed to be investigating.
I do wish it had been the other way around.
Anyway, as it turns out, the inspector who went to investigate the Redheaded League that day wasn't actually Gregson at all. It was Mr. Vigil in the possession of Gregson's identification.
You know what that sounds like to me? Establishing an alibi. Oh my. Yes, you're absolutely right, Iris.
But why would Gregson need an alibi?
It would appear that the inspector had something to do that he wished to keep secret. don't believe it. I always thought he was just a harmless lover of fish and chips.
As they were seasoned with something a little more potent than salt and vinegar.
I think perhaps we should try to move away from food analogies.
Well, anyway, if Lord Van Zeeks felt the need to investigate Gregson,
Yes, I agree. We must try to find out what he knows. Well, I think it's clear what we need to do, isn't it? Let us investigate, my dear fellows. Oh, Iris, you're even more enthusiastic than usual today. If anyone has anything to hide, my special Wilson shooting iron will set them straight.
that water pistol?
It's stuffed full of a piping hot, extra special blend of mine. That I'm sure it will be very effective.
Be careful not to hide anything. Well, it feels a little strange that Mr. Sholmes is nowhere to be seen, but still. Let's go and see what we can find out.
Yes.
Hey, Not, how are you doing? We made a man have a mental breakdown.
Lord Van Zeeks is reading a book. He doesn't seem like he wants visitors, does he?
Must have noticed that we're here, surely. What do you Nipponese want? That's no way to greet the lawyer who's trying his hardest to prove your innocence, is it? Perhaps not. Hmm? I apologize. So, what can I do for you, Mr. Nodahodo?
Lord Van Zeeks, speaking earnestly. Oh, the fog will lift over London for the first time in months tomorrow.
It does feel very, very strange. I must say, I was impressed. Oh, well, thank you. Not by you. By your fellow Nipponese, your prosecutor friend. Yeah, that was a vigil. Oh, I see. Yes. Sardonic, don't you think? For a man such as me, so loathing of the Nipponese, entirely at the mercy of you two. I suppose. It's retribution for having played the part of the Reaper all these years. Played the part? You once told me that you gladly allowed people to believe you were the Reaper, because it helped reduce the amount of serious crime that took place in London. Hey Taco, how are you doing? If keeping quiet and playing the part befits the cause, a cause I myself am committed to pursuing, then why would I choose to say anything? The henchman of a criminal killed by the Reaper attacked you only the other day. That was just the most recent of many attempts on your life, wasn't it? Someone is clearly profiting from your silence about all this. Someone is using you. Believe me, ever since the Reaper first appeared, I've been doing my utmost to expose him. Or rather, expose the organization.
It's a whole organization?
It's inconceivable that all these accidents were orchestrated by one man. No.
Reaper always appears to be Reaper always appears to have very accurate information about the accused in each case. Which can only mean that somebody at Scotland Yard is involved.
Someone at... You can't mean...
It's taken me many years, but I've finally identified the central figure in this Reaper organization. Tobias Gregson.
No. No!
Gregson? The Reaper? I don't know. I don't know why, that just sounds really funny. Especially because my brain is so brain rotted on 14 currently, that when I read this, it read like a Final Fantasy 14 like name tag. Because Reaper is a class in 14. I think it's an Endwalker class, I actually don't remember, but... So, the reason you were investigating Inspector Gregson is because... you intended to expose him as the Reaper? As I said, the Reaper of the Bailey is no single person. It's a highly secret organization with close ties to Scotland Yard. But there's no doubt that Gregson was a key member of that organization.
I don't believe it. Are you saying that that he was behind all those awful criminals meeting their...
Gregson didn't do the dirty work himself.
Oh.
He was the tactician. His job was to covertly investigate the marks and plot their assassinations. In order to do that without arousing suspicion, he regularly needed a firm alibi. Which is where Mr. Vigil came in, posing as the inspector. Vigil knows nothing of the Reaper. The room he rents on Fresno Street was almost certainly the headquarters of the operation. Gregson would have met the assassin there for briefings.
So we don't actually know who carried out the killings then?
Actually, I do have a name.
You what?
Well, you can name the man. You have the true identity of the Reaper already then.
Or if I can name the woman.
Oh.
The young woman, by the name of Asa Shin.
Asa Shin? Where have we heard the last name Shin before? No! Fucking Giselle Brett? Okay, that's a good reveal. Wait, what? Shin. Miss Asa Shin, the true name of a terrifying killer I know only too well. She came to Japan posing as a visiting student and murdered Dr. John H. Wilson. Then, just when it seemed that diplomatic protection would help her escape Japan and conviction, the mysterious woman was herself murdered in a small summer beach hut. And that woman was actually the Reaper of the Bailey?
Mr. Naruhodo, this perhaps isn't the place to discuss.
No, of course not. We can't mention it here.
fact that she killed Dr. John H. Wilson. Because Iris doesn't know, and it's very likely that the man was her father.
It's time to whip out my murder theory board. Does that mean that the whole reason that she went to the beach was to try to kill Natsume? Do you think that that was her plot, is that she was going to kill Soseki when they went to the beach to enact the Reaper's curse, but got killed before she had the chance?
Asa Shin. I should let father know at once.
Yes, I agree. I don't think you should tell, him shit, because he refuses to give us information. Kazuma, isn't it? Kazuma Asogi. You say he's a friend of yours.
It would be funny if that was true. I mean, as it stands, there currently is no information to disprove that that claim. So I'm gonna stick with it.
My best friend. He's the whole reason I got to come to Britain. It was all on his merits.
Yes, you could say Asogi is a friend, in quotation marks.
I have nothing but respect for him. Yes, I understand that only the very best students are selected for such opportunities. I had a fine demonstration of how sharp he is in the proceedings earlier today. Missed nothing. In fact, his flawless performance very much reminded me of his father. Genshin Asogi, Professor. It's true that the aristocracy at the time was the root of numerous grave societal problems. They were abusing their power, playing with the common man as pawns in politics, economics, in war. In many ways, Asogi was carving out a canker from society that we British couldn't deal with ourselves.
Ah, I see.
But that's precisely why it makes no sense. Clint Van Zieks was a noble and upstanding man. He wasn't corrupt. Why did that damned Nipponese have to go and take my brother's life? In spite of having once saved mine. He saved your life? How did that happen? It was 10 years ago, on a foggy night. What was to be the professor's final strike had sent a wave of panic through the capital.
So Clint Van Zieks had already been killed at this point then.
Sorry, give me a sec.
Genshin Impact Asogi.
Genshin and I were walking down some back streets at a late hour. Of course, at that point, I had no idea of the true nature of the man at my side. All of a sudden... Don't make a peep. You're coming with us. We were surrounded. All of our assailants were armed with pistols, their faces obscured by scarves. Clint was not only from a noble heritage, he was a brilliant prosecutor as well. The scum of London hated the sight of him. They had no sympathy for his younger brother either. He'd been targeted several times before already. Yeah, it's Van Zeek's all right. We've got him. I could hear them murmuring amongst themselves. I knew they were after me. But just when I thought my time had come, I'd let them kill you. Clint will never forgive me. It was Asogi's voice, just a whisper in my ear. After that, I don't remember exactly what happened. Next thing I knew, there was silence all around. Genshin lay on the cobbled street. Blood was seeping from his left hand. He'd shielded me. Two days later, they arrested him. On suspicion of being London's most notorious mass murderer ever, the Professor.
How awful for you.
All at once, I lost the brother I revered, the foreign friend I held in such high regard. So sorry, Lord Van Zeeks. That's the end of my miserable tale. I never thought I'd recount it to anyone.
Well, thank you for confiding in me.
The Professor, the Reaper, and Inspector Gregson. I wonder just how intimately related they all are.
Still can't quite believe that Gregson was essentially the Reaper. Giving assassination orders to Giselle Brett. I mean, I think... Actually, no. I was gonna say, I think that they're still using, like, flintlocks and stuff, but they aren't because we literally have a revolver in our pocket. Giving assassination orders to Giselle Brett.
Mr. Naruhodo, let's go and inform my father. I'm sure our government will want to hear about this new information. Oh, that means I get to meet your daddy, Susie. Hooray!
Yes, alright. Let's head back to the Great Waterloo Hotel then. The way that they did describe it sounded like he blocked it with his hand.
In some ways, this place seems to rather suit Lord Ven's... Oh dear, did I say that out loud? I thought it yesterday, and I think it again today. This place is so princely.
It's a wild guess, but I have a feeling you'll think the same tomorrow, too.
My tea has a finer fragrance than whatever they're serving in the tea room here, though, wouldn't you say?
Ah, look what we have here. This is an unexpected pleasure.
Ah, Father. Oh, is this your daddy, Susie? How lovely.
Charming young lady. What a charming young lady. You are?
Thank you for the hydrate.
Ah, really? So you're the author of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, are you?
I really hope that, the other judge doesn't end up in court, because then I'll just have to be doing the judge voice back and forth.
That's me, Iris Wilson, at your service, sir. And Susie's been such a wonderful friend to me over the last year, you know.
Well, Miss Wilson, Must say I read your work regularly and with much interest.
Iris actually lives with Mr. Sholmes, you know, Father.
That's so. Well, perhaps that goes some way to explaining that bright look in your eyes.
You wouldn't be smiling so early if you knew just how bright she is, believe me.
Then, young Naruhodo, it was a pleasure seeing you in action earlier. As an invitee of the symposium, I was allowed to observe from the gallery, after I twisted some arms. I must say, it was a truly exemplary performance.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Although I'm fairly sure you omitted by Kazuma on the end there.
Oh, no, please don't misunderstand. It was you who impressed me.
Really?
Didn't miss a step against Asugi. We all know how capable he is. Really, to have matured into such a fine defense lawyer in less than a year, it's quite extraordinary.
It's very kind of you to say so. Really nice to hear.
What I saw in court today confirmed what I'd been hoping for. Favor I mentioned yesterday, Naruhodo. I trust you haven't forgotten.
Oh, no, you did mention something, didn't you?
But first, we have something to report, Father.
No. Favor comes first. Of course. Shall we take tea while we discuss matters further?
I wonder where Judge Jikoku has got to.
Father, do you know about the so-called Reaper of the Bailey?
Shiny first, talk later.
Heard rumors. Some members of the judiciary explained it all to me yesterday. Of course, when I was a visiting student here in London, Reaper was yet to emerge.
Right, he didn't appear until after that case when the visiting students had already returned home.
Lord Van Zeeks, who was in the dock today. That was Barak, the younger brother of Clint Van Zeeks, I believe.
That's right. And he's known throughout London as the Reaper, as you've heard. But the truth is, it wasn't him behind all of those mysterious deaths. It was somebody else.
I see. What you're saying is, there's been a professional killer at work here.
Exactly. Someone by the name of Asa Shin, in fact.
Beg your pardon. Did you say Asa Shin?
You mean the Giselle Brett woman who's responsible for killing my great friend?
Oh no! A friend of yours was killed.
Oh gosh, we're stepping on this landmine. Professor Mikotoba, I think perhaps we shouldn't discuss this right now. It's the friend that Professor's talking about. It's Dr. John H. Wilson. It's not something we want Iris to find out about. Not like this, anyway.
I've just remembered something. Biscuits. This hotel has the most delicious-looking biscuits.
Rather out of the blue?
That's like my thought process. She's doing this deliberately.
I think I'll go and see if I can purchase some. I wonder, would you like to come too, Iris? Oh, yes. You just try to leave me behind.
Young girl. It's called Iris Wilson, is she?
Yes, that's right.
She's the author of all those adventure stories starring the great Detective Sholmes. Name of the credited author isn't Iris, is it? It's Dr. John H. Wilson.
Yes, I know. That's the name of her father, you see.
Her father? Dr. John H. Wilson. was deeply indebted to the man for all the kindness he showed me during my time in London. That's why I was keen to reciprocate and invite him to the Imperial Yume University 4 years ago. He was murdered last year by Giselle Brett. Why? Why would the Hand of the Reaper stretch all the way to Japan? Iris knows nothing about that case, but it seems very likely that the victim, Dr. Wilson, was her father. Well, I can't say that whoever spoke about his family, so I don't know if he had a daughter or not. I think I can say with some certainty, he was never the great detective's partner. So it could have been another Dr. Wilson, do you think? Well, John and Wilson are both common names, after all. I don't buy it. Still, it's probably best not to mention this to the young lady until we can be sure. That's what we thought, yes.
We're back with cinnamon biscuits.
Ooh, they smell delicious, Iris.
I think cinnamon will go very well with the tea they serve here. Don't you, Susie? Yes, I'm sure you're right, Iris.
I haven't seen Judge Jikoku for a while, have you? Guilty. That guilty is still ringing in my ears. Oh, now that you mention it, I haven't seen him since this morning either. I suppose since the symposium's opening was postponed, he'll have gone to explore the great exhibition.
That reminds me of something you mentioned yesterday.
Conversations in this game are very dramatic. Yep.
About Judge Jikoku having once been in the dock himself.
Yes. It's all tied up with that accursed trial. Closed trial of Kazuma's father. Seishiro was trying to mitigate Genshin's guilt. Took to the stand to testify. But he got a little carried away and, actually managed to break the witness stand.
Oh my.
He also said some contemptuous words about the British Empire, for which he was charged. Oh dear. Although it's worryingly easy to imagine him doing that. Well, it was alright in the end. He was acquitted and we returned home to Japan together.
Thank goodness.
Ah yes. Talking of Seishiro, I have a copy of the photograph we all took together here yesterday. Please.
Oh, what a lovely picture.
It certainly seems to shout, "We've arrived in Britain."
Sorry, give me a second. I think I just put 2 and 2 together for something. And I don't like it. As stupid of a thought as this might be, I think the person that killed Gregson was Seishiro. And the reasoning why Ryunosuke looks like his life was dependent on this photo. Seishiro has a gun pressed up against his back. I think that Seishiro might be the murderer. And my reasoning why is because one plot point that got brought up in the last trial was that one of the people that went to the room had a big trunk. And this is the only big trunk we have seen in this case, is Seishiro's luggage. That might not even be luggage. And that's sus to me. Especially since we're getting this as evidence, like, that's gonna, I feel like that's gonna be important. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. None of us had any idea what was coming when we took that, did we?
No. No, that's so true.
So, you mentioned a favor that you'd like to ask me. Well, this fateful trial that you're fighting. Way or another, it will be over before long. When it is, I'd like you to accompany me back to Japan. Want me to do...
What? Father, what's the meaning of this?
If that's true, that would be in line with Ace Attorney's craziness. Like, I don't know. I feel like with our current information, it's a long shot, because that is the one piece of evidence that I have. Now, Susato, you should understand. You've seen how our courts work firsthand. Japan's judicial system is in its infancy, especially when it comes to defense. The one piece.
Oh, you mean...
Supreme Court of Judicature is in desperate need of a good defense lawyer. As soon as possible. Really quite urgently, in fact. But, not even been in London a year yet. Read all of Susato's reports, I'm well aware of your extraordinary talents. Having seen you in action with my own eyes earlier today, there's no question. You, Naruto, are precisely the man our country needs.
And so, you'd be leaving then, Bruno? But then, what am I supposed to do, Father?
Came here to serve as Asogi's judicial assistant. Oh yes, she's supposed to be Kazuma's assistant. Government is still in the process of deciding how best to deal with the situation, though. Always chosen your own path, Susato. And I trust your judgment. This matter also.
Father,
Imagine your ancestor being this big shot who's basically the foundation for the defense lawyers in your country, and then you just become an art student. Please, the pair of you, don't look so downcast. It's merely a suggestion, you understand? A hope, if I'm honest, but I won't force you. All I ask is that you consider it. Come to a decision by the time this trial concludes. Yes, all right. He's also...
You won't leave, will you, Reno?
Actually, wait, I don't want to say that. I was gonna say something, but it's spoilers for Apollo Justice, so thought hadn't even crossed my mind. Up until now, I've just been trying to do what I believe to be Kazuma's will. But it turns out that he's still alive, so where does that leave me? Well, if you'll excuse me now. I need to telegram government ministers and the Japanese police with this information about Asa Shin.
Of course, Father. Thank you.
Look forward to next month's installment, Miss Wilson.
Oh, good. And please, do come to Baker Street sometime, won't you? We'd love to entertain you.
I'd be delighted. Best of luck for tomorrow, Naruto. And
my suggestion your full consideration, would you? Yes, I will. Going back home?
You know, Kazuma-sama has always meant a great deal to my father. I'm sure he'd love the chance to meet with him and talk to him about all this.
Yes, no doubt.
Asa Shin. Of course, it's so obvious.
Oh. I thought this was Iris because Iris was the only other person in the scene.
How could I have neglected to consider the possibility before now? Ha! Mr. Sholmes!
Hurley, where have you been?
Why, I joined you all for tea, of course. What an extraordinary question.
I didn't notice you at all.
No matter, no matter. Anyway, to more pressing concerns, Mr. Naruhodo.
Sholmes has the ability to instant transmission when you least expect it. You see, the secret is that Sholmes has been speaking half of the lines that Iris has been speaking in Iris's voice. So everyone just assumed it was Iris talking.
Oh, yes? I must dispatch a telegram to your country at once. It is a matter of much urgency. To Japan, you mean? Tell me, to whom can I entrust the task? Quickly now, who?
Sholmes has been hitting the voice training. Don't you know? Being able to do a large amount of voices really helps in an investigation.
Well, my father just now left to send a telegram to the Imperial Police Bureau of Japan himself.
I see. Well, he looked reliable enough for a bearded fellow.
Yeah, like, Master of Disguise is literally one of his, like, trademarks.
I don't think that what father sports could be considered a beard, Mr. Sholmes.
There's not a moment to lose. Kindly ask your trusty, unshaven father to see this is sent.
I will, but what is it?
No questions at this time, if you please, Miss Susato. All we can do is pray that for once, my deduction is awry.
Doesn't that imply that your deductions are normally correct, Mr. Sholmes? Which isn't exactly...
Now then. You may be surprised to learn that I'm a very busy man. I certainly have no time to hide behind settees? Settees and eavesdrop on other people's conversations. So that's what joining us for tea meant. I leave the sending of this in your hands then, my dear fellows.
Set tease.
Oh, wait a minute, Mr. Sholmes.
He just sort of ran off, didn't he? At quite a pace.
Left the unpaid bill for his tea behind, too.
I must catch up with father at the telegraph office at once. And I'll run and call us a cab. Straight away.
Why does everyone have overdramatic poses in this series? Because it helps convey characters. Like, it helps convey their character.
There was me thinking everyone would be clamoring to pay Mr. Sholmes' bill.
This is the ward where Mr. Vigil was brought, apparently.
To be frank, I'm a little worried about seeing him again. Like, I definitely feel like the animations help, though. This series definitely isn't, like, the type to, pull its punches. Because these games get some absolutely ridiculous shit in them. But that's like... that's one of the best parts. Dramatic poses like instant noodles might not be the best for the task, but it's a quick and easy way to do it.
The lawyer. Hello again.
Are you feeling better now, Mr. Vigil?
Yes, thank you. Somewhat better. So sorry to have caused you to... I mean, it's because of me. I hadn't exposed your secret and forced you to remember things you'd obviously tried to forget. The prosecutor was here until a few moments ago, too. You just missed him.
Oh, Kazuma beat us to it. Especially, like, even if you're going... I think another part of it is that, like, the animations got a lot more over the top when the games transitioned into 3D, because they could get away with a lot of crazy stuff.
Oh, Kazuma beat us to it. He said much the same as you. He was very apologetic. But the truth is, I brought all this upon myself.
Please, don't think like that.
Keeping it from Evie, my wife all these years, I've carried such a sense of guilt. But that's not the worst of it. Over time, I obviously came to deceive myself as well.
You mean about your dismissal?
Looking back now, I'm beginning to think that perhaps Inspector Gregson didn't stumble across me by accident at all. I mean, he compensated me so generously for acting as his stand-in. He was clearly concerned for my well-being, doing what he could to help.
Perhaps Gregson knew exactly what had become of Mr. Vigil all along, then.
I'm sure this is just desserts for 10 years of lies and deception, but... it wasn't me that helped the professor escape 10 years ago. It wasn't me. I swear it. I swear it's true.
Oh, Mr. Vigil.
Sure you'd rather not dredge up even more from your past at this time, but... if possible, could you tell us exactly what really happened?
I want to. I need to get all of this off my chest. I just want someone to tell me what I should have done.
Honestly, completely random, or I guess it's kind of tangentially related to the conversation earlier. Honestly, I think Ace Attorney had a pretty smooth transition into 3D. Like, the models in Dual Destinies are a little bit weird. Namely Athena. Athena has some really, like, weird expressions. But, yeah, the Dual Destinies is a little bit rough. But I haven't seen Spirit of Justice, but the couple models that I've seen from Spirit of Justice look good. The Professor Layton crossover is really good looking. And these two games are fantastic looking. They nailed the 3D presentation in this game. And see you, Lobster.
Inspector Gregson was obviously engaged in a special operation of some sort. He was investigating something that even Scotland Yard couldn't know about. Details of the Reaper's marks, yes. It was when he had to carry out those investigations that I would take his identification and impersonate him.
Sound design is also really nice, especially in the first case. You know, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the only 3D model from Dual Destinies that I'm a little bit iffy on is just some of Athena's facial expressions look really weird. And that's about it. Like, the rest of Athena's animations are pretty good. Black Quill's animations are fantastic. Phoenix and Apollo look really good in 3D. Like, you pretend to be the inspector and carry out investigations on his behalf. I'm really curious to see how they've touched up the models for the HD port.
No. Oh no, never. Common street peddler couldn't possibly carry out a proper police investigation. All I would do is go to the specified location and make a little hoo-ha. Just something to leave an impression, so everyone there would think a detective called Gregson was here.
And so, that's what you were doing on the day prior to the incident.
I think it's mainly her, like, surprised and, like, shocked faces that look really weird. It's the mouth on him. It's the mouth.
Yes, he asked me to make an appearance at the park in Lime Street for the Redheaded League event. And so as usual, I flashed the inspector's identification around and was very vocal about my presence.
But then you were taken prisoner by those red-headed fraudsters.
Yes.
So you would always make a point of showing Gregson's identification and generally being loud?
That's what the inspector asked me to do, yes.
Well, that's one way of becoming a legendary detective, I suppose. Not a good one, though.
And as you know, I suffered this bruising around my neck at their hands. But the following day, they kept their word and released me.
By returning the inspector's identification to you, however.
We had arranged to meet in the Fresno Street room at 5 that day, so I could report back to the inspector. But at the agreed time, that's when I heard the gunshot. It was at midnight on June 10 years ago. That was the time scheduled for the execution.
But the professor's execution never actually took place, did it?
Or rather, the execution itself must have been used to effect the plan of escape. I hardly dare to imagine what a chilling plan it was.
Barclay was renowned for being the highest security prison in the country. Everything that went in or out of the place was searched multiple times. But there was one notable exception. Or rather, one notable loophole. Something that was never questioned.
I have a feeling I know what that loophole was now. The coffins into which the bodies of the executed convicts were placed, correct?
Yes. Once the coroner had confirmed the death of a condemned convict, the body was taken in its coffin for immediate burial in the Lowgate Cemetery, just behind the prison. The chief warder first had to sign the necessary papers. And after that, no member of staff was permitted to touch the coffin containing the body again. When executions took place, only the executioner and the coroner were permitted inside the chamber. I would wait in the adjacent room for word that the condemned convict was dead. On that occasion, once I had that confirmation, I went into the mortuary to find a lone coffin as usual. The procedure was that I would sign the paperwork having checked the coffin, then nail it shut. But for some reason that day, the coffin was already nailed shut.
No.
I didn't think anything of it at the time. I assumed that my deputy must have checked the coffin and nailed it shut before I arrived. So, you mean, coffin contained? Yes, I can only imagine that Asogi, having escaped his execution somehow, was alive inside the coffin. The coffin was then taken out through the main gates and deposited in Lowgate Cemetery.
Presumably there wouldn't have been enough air inside to breathe for long.
So in the early hours following the burial, somebody dug up the coffin again to set Genshin free.
But in the end, he was fatally shot in the graveyard anyway. What on earth really happened in Lowgate Cemetery that night, I wonder?
Afraid I really don't know. All I can say with certainty are two things. Asogi couldn't possibly have escaped that way without help from somebody working in the prison. And that somebody was not me. Obviously, you knew the man then. The professor, I mean. Genshin Asogi. Yes, I remember him well, in fact. Would you mind telling us what you know? Well, having been condemned to death as he was, any contact I had with the man was short, obviously. After that trial, which was carried out behind closed doors, attended only by the elite members of the judiciary, they called for his execution to be carried out at the earliest possible opportunity. The outcome of the trial was set from the beginning, wasn't it?
It was a time of delicate diplomacy when Britain and Japan were in the process of signing an important treaty. That meant that this potentially destabilizing case had to be dealt with swiftly and discreetly.
The man had less than a week in total. As I was the chief warder, I oversaw his short stay in the cells until his final hour. I remember being struck deeply by his noble character and incredible resilience. What do you mean exactly? He was a killer of many men, but he was always quiet and polite. He was a gentleman and a man of intellect. In fact, I couldn't bring myself to believe that what he'd done, so I asked him one day. Those 5 members of the aristocracy whose lives were taken, were you really responsible? I'm guilty of the unforgivable crime of ending another human's life, yes. The following day, the closed trial took place, and the verdict was no surprise. Guilty. That night, when he was brought back into his cell, I saw something unusual. Something unusual? What? The last will and testament of Genshin Asogi. As I said, it was on the night following his trial, after he'd been found guilty. I was doing the rounds of the cells, and when I looked into Asogi's, I noticed that he seemed to have a sheet of paper in his hand. Ah, last will and testament then, presumably. As soon as he noticed me, he hurriedly shoved it behind his back.
But why did you find that so unusual? Isn't it normal for a man to pen a will when he knows his death is nigh?
Yes, that's true. But there were special conditions to Asogi's incarceration, you see. What sort of conditions? Well, even though he was held in a cell designed for condemned inmates, he was allowed to keep his personal effects with him, with one exception.
Really? His loudest things. That is unusual, certainly.
Of course, he'd been convicted of killing 5 members of the aristocracy. But at the same time, he was a guest in our country from the Empire of Japan. The powers that be were determined that his final days shouldn't be needlessly uncomfortable.
And what was the exception you mentioned? To the personal effects he was allowed.
His sword.
That's the point.
Oh.
He wasn't permitted to have writing materials. Specifically, no pens or paper.
And so, he was prevented from leaving any written record of what had happened to him.
Yes, that was the long and the short of it. I have no idea where he obtained that paper. Any writing materials would have been confiscated from him upon his incarceration.
That's sketchy as fuck.
As I said, he hid the paper behind his back, and then he pleaded with me. What did you just hide behind your back? Please, please turn a blind eye. This is my lifeline. But you know it's against the rules. The only person who's seen. You just agree to keep quiet. Alright then. But what's on that paper? Last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. How can a will be a weapon? So I decided to pretend I'd seen nothing, and let him keep his will. But then later, it just seemed to vanish without a trace.
What? What do you mean it vanished?
It would seem that this isn't the end of the story of this mysterious will.
I was the only person who saw Asogi's will, but
Somehow it disappeared.
it was after Asogi's execution.
Which was actually an elaborate jailbreak.
The warders gathered up Asogi's possessions that were in his cell. They were all to be sent back to his family home in Japan, you see.
And to poor Kazuma-sama.
And you're saying it wasn't anywhere to be found among his personal effects?
The will, I mean. That's right, though I didn't search through them myself. But Governor Caden was livid. He was screaming. Can't have disappeared completely.
That doesn't quite make sense though, does it?
What way?
Well, we'd understood only that Mr. Vigil was aware of the will's existence. In which case, how did the prison governor know to look for it?
Oh yes, you're right. I really don't know how he knew. But it certainly seemed as though he knew of the will's existence from the outset. Only he didn't refer to it as a will. What he said was... the Asogi papers.
Sogi papers.
I really can't tell you anything of the subsequent events. Because, well, of what happened.
Dismissal. The way you blocked it all from your memory.
I'd forgotten all of this until today. I don't suppose it's relevant to the case, though.
Well, anyway, thank you very much for sharing it with us, Mr. Vigil. We're very grateful.
I'm afraid there's really little more I can tell you. My wife Evie will be here shortly, so I do hope I don't appear rude, but...
No, not at all. Thank you again.
But what will become of you now?
Well, impersonating a police officer is a criminal offense, of course. I imagine that once I'm fully recovered, I shall be arrested. so sorry. Don't be, please. This was all my own doing. I always knew that this day would come. Well, I wish you well. Goodbye, Mr. Vigil. Before you go, there's just one thing. Oh, yes? What is it? The Asogi papers. I'd be very grateful if you make no mention of the things I told you about them. Presumably for some good reason? It's my understanding that their very existence is a closely guarded secret. If it became known that I'd remembered, well, it could be rather troublesome, I think. I understand. Some sort of will that Genshin Asogi penned just before his death, which the man himself claimed was his last weapon. I wonder. Perhaps it had something to do with his plan to escape. If there's anyone who might know more about a document that Kazuma's father left behind.
It'd be Mr. Vigil's governor. Then we know precisely where we must go. Back to Barclay Prison.
Ugh. Back again, are you? Yes? Hello? What about your investigations? I read the report just now. You found him, eh? Vigil. Yes, luckily. Well, anywho, glad he doesn't work here no more. Your case is not to do with Barclay. Like you. I wouldn't like you to get the wrong idea about that. Of course, yes. Mr. Vigil stopped working here 10 years ago now, so...
Yes, we've seen his dismissal notice, haven't we? He was given the job.
Aye, Kimmer. Can very well. How about a wee handcuff biscuit?
Oh, they really are like little handcuffs. And as hard as irons, too.
Oh, what brought you down here today? I don't know what I'm doing with this guy's voice. Well, there's something else we'd like to ask you about, actually. That's so. We believe there might have been a document that disappeared from Genshin Asogi's cell. I don't know how to do a Scottish accent. I think it's been called the Asogi Papers or something. I'll say, Erikson's death has naught to do with things that might have happened at Barclay. Leave the past in the past, laddie. Let's not footer about with irrelevant details. His expressions changed completely. Yeah. Clearly onto something here. Murderous botched execution. A miserable escape. Barclay's darkest hour, aye. A shocking embarrassment. As the convict had a collaborator on the prison staff, you mean? Aye. For shame. Coroner who confirmed the death of the man after his execution. Courtney Scythe. My chief warder at the time, Vigil, was in charge of the whole affair.
But Mr. Vigil says he didn't know anything about it.
Rascal wouldn't say otherwise, eh? Or handcuffs.
Oh, how could I say no? You can never have too much iron in your diet. When Mr. Vigil was handed his dismissal notice as a result of what had happened, he was so despairing he jumped out of your office window, didn't he?
Like to say, but that's just Vigil trying to get out of it. I think he would have jumped from the shock of his crimes being exposed, eh? I do. Wouldn't I say otherwise, though, would you? Of course, I cannot show no responsibility myself. I shouldn't have let him deceive me. Actually, there's barely anybody that kens what went on at the time now. Gregson having been murdered and Dr. Scythe forbidden from having any visitors. No visitors. Someone obviously doesn't want her giving anything away.
Well, we're not going home empty-handed.
Dream of sending you packing without Kimmer, see? A handcuff or two.
Oh, well, it would be rude to say no. I wouldn't want to become anemic.
Suppose if there's anybody who might still ken about what happened back then. Be the last from the forensic division. Maria Gori. Maria Gori? Aye, Scythe's daughter. I have no more, just the one. The wee barons followed her in her mom's footsteps. Don't ever see her without a scalpel in her hand. Ah.
I want to see what she looks like under her mask.
Mama, what's this?
Ah, where did she spring from? And she just called the doctor Mama? Dr. Scythe's daughter, Maria Gori. You could do with talking to her. So she's Dr. Scythe's daughter, but her surname is Gori? Just reminds you of Mariah Carey.
Aye, there's some family history, I'm sure. I don't know the ins and outs of it. She grew up watching her mom working with the bodies of folk who died in strange circumstances. Decided to do the same with her own life. I can't understand it myself.
Perhaps she was driven by a deep respect for her mother.
Perhaps. She was in charge of Gregson's autopsy, I believe.
She was. Right, and the coroner responsible for this incomplete report.
Someone told me once that the wee lassie always loved her mom's stories about cutting up bodies. There's even a rumor that she used to listen to the funeral march as a lullaby.
Well, then perhaps her mother might have told her about the autopsy from the case 10 years ago.
That was Iris's voice, or closer to Iris's voice than Susato's voice. Whoops.
Aye. I'd say there's a fighting chance, at least. After all, that was a life-changing case for all of us.
I only need to speak to Miss Gori herself about this, I think. Well, thank you very much.
Not happy about any part of this. Years for Londoners to finally forget the whole professor business. Not give up on this, laddie. Stop asking pointless questions.
I'm sorry, I don't like dredging up these painful memories for everyone.
Not just stay away, no? Leave me alone and don't come back here, eh? You come to ken about that, laddie. Not many folk here in the prison who've heard of those papers.
Ah, well, I can't tell him Mr. Vigil told me.
I'm afraid our sources must remain confidential, sir.
You've been led to believe that the papers are actually a last will and testament, is that right? The professor's, or rather Genshin Asogi's.
Aye, that's right. You're well informed, Jimmy.
Oh, is that the end of the silent treatment? But then after the convict's execution, it mysteriously vanished from his cell, didn't it?
Avars, no, you're off at half-cock there. But you didn't quite get your facts straight. It's there in the cell. Exactly where it should have been.
Oh. Oh, what we heard elsewhere. Maybe we Hulk around in here. Sure I can find it. Aye, here you are. See? Last Will and Testament of Genshin Asogi, written with a calligraphy brush. Of course, I can't read a word of those Japanese squiggles. In my mind, it says he leaves all his worldly possessions to his son back in his homeland.
Yes, that's correct. That's the gist of it.
So these are the Asogi papers? Aye, of course they are. It was written by Asogi, no doubt about it. No mystery here, laddie. That's your lot. After all the Stramash? Slicer of an execution? We sent the man's possessions back to his clan in Japan, and that was the end of it.
I think we ought to make a record of this, Mr. Naruhodo. Just in case.
Think before you go on your way, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, yes? Scottish slang for something? Those papers are not to do with Gregson's death. I'd prefer it if you didn't make no mention of them outside this office. Or rather, I wouldn't just prefer it. Consider it an order from the highest levels of our government. I understand. Then why did you give these to us? Okay, I, Genshin Asogi, hereby request that upon my death, any and all material possessions and wealth belonging to me in London be delivered to my son, Kazuma Asogi, in the Empire of Japan. It is with deep sadness that I accept my fate in this foreign land, in the knowledge that I will never see my homeland or family again, but I regret nothing about my chosen path. No arguments, Prosecutor Asogi. We'll continue with the trial exactly as I instructed. Is that clear? Perfectly.
It's Kazuma-sama.
Lying Lord Strongheart by the sound of it. He never did know when to back down. On your way now, Asogi. My lord. Kazuma. Left without saying a word. Yes, what are you doing here? Oh, well, I was just hoping to ask you a few questions, if you wouldn't mind. I wanted Van Zeeks' trial concluded today. But Prosecutor Asogi's unwelcome inquiries are going to make it take a lot longer than necessary. Unwelcome inquiries? As a result, I'm losing even more precious time. Currently 2 hours, 55 minutes, and 41 seconds. 2:43.
Then we must resolve everything before 3 hours have passed, Mr. Naruhodo.
Miraculous, not even 5 minutes? Anyway, I can't let the man's obvious bad mood put me off. I need information. Does Prosecutor Asogi believe that Lord Van Zeeks is the Reaper? I wouldn't know. It was 10 years ago, in that fateful closed trial, that Lord Van Zeeks made a name for himself among the judiciary. But the next trial he fought, he lost. It meant the ringleader of a criminal organization was acquitted,
thanks to all the jurors being under duress. That's awful. The man's freedom was short-lived. Lasted just 3 days.
Yes, let me see. He died in a rock slide at his place of work, I believe.
Correct. That was the inauguration of the Reaper of the Bailey. People believed Lord Van Zieks was responsible. He was brought to trial himself, but it was shown to have been an accident.
So he must have had a solid alibi then.
Nevertheless, mysterious deaths continued. In total, 16 persons perished in unusual circumstances. Ostensibly at the hand of the Reaper. That's a long run of coincidences.
Well, the Reaper's true identity may well be revealed by this trial.
Also, where is Iris?
And the impact that revelation would have on the British public cannot be understated.
Is that why it's a closed trial?
Precisely. This country hasn't seen a closed trial for 10 years.
So the last one is the professor's trial of Genshin Asogi.
Correct.
Is this guy's office in Big Ben? It seems like it, doesn't it? Like, genuinely. Actually, we heard that originally you were going to prosecute that trial yourself, Lord Strongheart.
Van Zieks entreated me to relinquish the prosecution to him, that he might avenge his brother's death. And here we are, 10 years later, with the son of the man Van Zieks had condemned now looking to avenge his father's death in the same way.
Do say that what goes around comes around.
However, it would seem that the new young prosecutor is harboring some ulterior motive as well.
Kazuma is.
Like my organization to run smoothly, the exact manner that I prescribe. As with the giant clock in here, I won't tolerate a single cog being out of step with the others.
Ah, so that's what all these gears are about in here.
The young man refuses to mesh with the other parts of my great machine. He'll be forced to take steps.
What do you mean?
Not something with which you need to concern yourself. In any case, all of your questions will be answered tomorrow. Now, I shall have to ask you to excuse me. As of this moment, I've been delayed from attending my next meeting by precisely 3 hours.
Oh my, that is a long time.
And I hold you entirely responsible.
Even though we miraculously managed to fit everything into not even 5 minutes? I wonder if you might agree to us, talking with Prosecutor Asogi.
Discussions between the defense and prosecution outside the courtroom are generally frowned upon. However, I'll make an exception in this case. Now go. You can find him in his office.
Oh, thank you.
Let's go see him at once, Mr. Naruhodo.
Kazuma's my best friend in the world, but really I'm not all sure I know how to talk to him at the moment. Real quick, I need to hit you with a quick BRB. This hopefully shouldn't take too long. Okay, we're back. And I will not forget to turn off the BRB text. So, this is the office of Prosecutor Asogi now, is it?
Kazuma-sama is doing so well for himself.
No, he's always forced to kneel on the floor, Japanese style in that dark corner.
It's a habit to sit Seiza style whenever he's working.
Kazuma. Thought it wouldn't be long before you paid me a visit, Ryunosuke. I was right about what I said, wasn't I? Sorry? You have all the makings of a great defense lawyer. Well, I always believed that you'd fulfill your dream of advocating in the British courts. I just never imagined for 1 second that it would be as a prosecutor.
And seeing you stand in a foreign courtroom so gallantly realizing your dream, Kazuma-sama, I'm truly happy for you.
And I'm truly thankful to you, Judicial Assistant Mikotoba. Ryunosuke, I always thought it would be fun for you and I to shake up the British legal system a little together. This isn't quite how I envisaged it, but I suppose it's just another twist of fate. I've learned a lot of things during my time in London. About Susato-san's father, about how Susato-san's father was himself a visiting student here once, along with Judge Jikoku. And about what happened with your father. You have no difficulty understanding why I had no choice, why I had to find a way to get to Britain as a visiting student myself. I want to hear it from you, Kazuma. As you wish, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. It's getting on for a year now, since what happened on the SS Bureau. We were heading across the oceans from Japan to Great Britain, when a bizarre series of coincidences led to these tragic events, or those tragic events. Thought I'd lost my best friend forever. Must have been unconscious for a long time. When I awoke, I was lying on a bed. It was a narrow little room. There was a posse of flowers by the pillow. It took me a little while to realize I was in the cabin of a ship. I slipped out of the room and headed up onto the deck. Were you already suffering from amnesia at that point? Yes. I didn't know what had happened or where I was. It was just this voice in my head. You have something you have to do. Something no one else can know about. Go to Great Britain. Your task awaits you there. It was a calling I couldn't ignore. It compelled me relentlessly. Out on deck, I saw that I was on a huge steamship and that we were docked at a large port.
It must have been Hong Kong.
Yes, it must have been. Presumably just before they were due to carry your body off the ship. I had no idea of the situation, but I did have the feeling that this was in some way my last chance. So I concealed myself among the disembarking passengers and went ashore. Then I disappeared into the crowded streets of that foreign port city, so I could plan my onward journey to Great Britain. Just under a year ago, with all my past memories lost to me, I was left behind in Hong Kong. Everything was foreign to me. The sights, the sounds, the smells. My head reeled. I was truly at a loss. I realized now that I'd escaped as a dead man, with nothing but the clothes on my back. No money, of course.
Oh, how terrifying for you.
Luckily, though, I had 2 feathers in my cap. One being your knowledge of English, I suppose. That's right. And on the back of that, I was able to pick up some work as a deckhand on a cargo ship. Eventually, after calling at countless ports, we finally arrived at Dover. Must have been some 3 months ago now. Formidable tenacity of purpose showing itself again. I mean, the man had lost his memory and had literally nothing to his name. But he still managed to make his way to London on the opposite side of the world. Of course, I had no idea why I'd moved to heaven and earth to get here at that point. So, how did you end up becoming Lord Van Zeeks' apprentice then? That can only be called an extraordinary stroke of luck, really. You see, I was stopped at the border because I had no papers. They took me straight to Scotland Yard. By sheer coincidence, Lord Strongheart was there to attend a meeting. That's when the second feather in my cap came into play.
Would that have been your knowledge of the law?
Yes, exactly. Lord Strongheart was curious about an Easterner with intimate knowledge of British law. He took me back with him to the Supreme Court and assigned me to the prosecutor's office. And then, 9 days ago, finally got your memory back, after the trial involving Drebber. Yes, I did. Ever since I first met you at Yume, you talked about your dream. Mark my words, Ryunosuke. I'll be chosen as a visiting student and make my way to Great Britain someday. Did you know the entire time about what had happened to your father? 16 years ago. When my father left on that exciting trip to Great Britain, I was just a boy. We took a photograph together the day before his departure. It's my last memory of him. But what I remember most about my father is his unswerving sense of justice.
Did he pay 2 spells for breaking the wax model? He probably made Van Zeeks foot the bill.
Six years after he left, a gentleman called at our family home. He told me that Genshin, my father, had been taken ill in England and passed away. It was Professor Mikotoba, your father, Susato-san.
Oh my.
Ever since then, the professor was very good to me. He even helped fund my university education at Yume. I'll be forever in his debt. But nevertheless, I just couldn't bring myself to believe what he'd told me.
Then one day, a letter arrived at our house from Britain. There was no indication of the sender, so I opened it assuming it was from an old acquaintance of my father. What I read in that letter changed my entire life. What did it say? It said that my father had been a mass murderer, that the writer cursed the Asogi name.
Oh no!
As a result of that letter, I found out what had been hidden from me all those years.
So Van Zieks sent an angry letter to Genshin's family.
Presumably, the letter was sent from a relative of one of the victims. Whoever it was had been a member of the judiciary. He could have been present at the closed trial. The letter revealed that my father had been sentenced to death, executed for being a killer.
I'm so sorry you had to find out that way.
I imagine the British government did its very best to silence whoever sent that letter. But someone who knew the truth and couldn't bear the resentment was going to be a problem.
But still, it could have been written by anyone. Why would you believe such a thing?
There's a newspaper cutting included with the letter. It's the first I'd ever heard of the professor and his terrible killing spree.
Well, what did my father have to say about the letter?
Couldn't bring myself to show it to him.
What? Why not?
Because he deliberately concealed the truth from me by telling me my father was taken by a fatal illness. That couldn't have been easy for him, and he'd done it out of consideration for my feelings. So instead, I showed the letter to Judge Jikoku.
Ah, to the other visiting student.
Altered for the briefest of moments, then he just laughed the letter off. But in that moment, I saw it on his face. He was undeniably shocked, shaken momentarily before recovering his poise. A year later, my bereaved mother succumbed to the strain of grief, and she too passed away. That's when I made up my mind that one day, without fail, I would cross the seas to Britain and seek the truth for myself. Truth about my father, Genshin Asogi. And I wouldn't let anyone stand in my way.
Oh, Kazuma-sama.
What we learned today in court turned things completely on their head. It was an impressive piece of lawyering, Ryunosuke Naruhodo.
Lord Van Zieks isn't the Reaper, you know? I almost don't want to believe it myself, but it turns out that Inspector Gregson himself, the victim, was...
It's clear that the inspector was behind the Reaper's activity all along.
What? You mean, you knew?
Real question is, who's been giving orders to the inspector? Yes, Eric Van Zieks is the real Reaper. I know that 10 years ago, it was him. Decided my father must be a mass murderer, and sent him to his grave.
No, he was merely saying that justice was done as the law dictates. He's not to blame.
Ultimately, it's people who condemn people. The law is just a tool that they use to do it. When a man condemns another, he must take responsibility for his actions. Of course he must. But I know for certain that my father would never have taken another man's life.
Kazuma.
On the contrary, my father's life was taken by the Reaper. Kazuma, what do you make of this? There's only one place where defense lawyers and prosecutors should discuss evidence. The courtroom. So it seems you're still confused by the situation. That's what I make of it. I get the feeling my friend's always going to have the edge over me, isn't he? Kazuma, this is your armband. Actually, I think it's yours now. Sorry? You're the defense lawyer. You have talent for it. I've always known that you would. And now you've chosen to take that path in life. As your friend, I couldn't be happier for you. Or more proud. Kazuma. So you keep hold of that. Besides, I'm a prosecutor now. That armband would have no meaning for me. Well, if you're sure. Thank you, my friend. He doesn't want to discuss any evidence, so I guess... What in the... It's a scale model of the crime scene. Oh, yes. I realize that. Does the prosecution office make a model of the scene for every single case? Apparently so. Sometimes it helps to visualize things better and notice things you hadn't spotted before. Actually, the miniature notice board is my work. Be honest, you enjoyed making that. What am I supposed to be presenting to you? None of the other spots tell me that, like, you know, oh, we've forgotten to do something here. I was shocked when I found out that they were related to the case. The Redheaded League, I mean. Personally, it wasn't their plan to swindle everyone that surprised me. It was the fact that so many redheaded people gathered from all over London that day. A certain great detective being among them. I expect those two are in their cells as we speak, wishing they'd never dreamt up their little plan. Maybe they're busy plotting their next one. Reaper. Last, I get to take my revenge. Kazuma. Lord Van Zeeks isn't responsible for your father's death, and he's not the Reaper. He's the defendant, and deserving of a fair trial. I mean, like the one my father had. It's a closed trial now, too. The conditions are exactly as they were 10 years ago. Even if it ruffles some feathers, I have a plan to show that man for what he really is. Kazuma. I'm just presenting random shit.
Oh, this came up in the trial, didn't it? As something a little dubious, I mean. The fact that no time of death was recorded on Inspector Gregson's autopsy report. Yes, there were some unexpected turns in the courtroom earlier. The suggestion you came up with certainly took everyone by surprise. The idea that the victim died the previous day at some other location is quite something. Well, considering when the pocket watch had stopped and the scorch marks on the candle, it's certainly a distinct possibility. The evidence and the scene both point to it. To be honest, it bothered me too, so I paid a visit to the autopsy room earlier. The coroner responsible wasn't there, but I got a name. It's Dr. Gory.
If it wouldn't trouble you, Kazuma-sama, we'd very much like to speak with the coroner too.
Of course. Last thing I want is for anything to be brushed under the carpet. Scotland Yard's autopsy laboratory is behind Lowgate Cemetery. Okay, so by Barclay Prison, you mean? Ah, you know it, do you? Prison where my father was incarcerated, robbed of his life.
Kazuma-sama.
Well, thank you. We'll pay a visit to the laboratory later today. Ryunosuke, I want to thank you. What for? For this. You safeguarded the soul of the Asogi clan. Well, it is a famous sword that's been in your family for generations. My only slight regret is that I never got the chance to draw it before I returned it to you. Karma is said to have been forged by a master swordsmith during the Sengoku Warring States period. They come from a long lineage of warriors, many of whom were expert swordsmen. Well then, you're a chip off the old block, I'd say. This blade, Karma, is the symbol of the Asogi clan's honor and might. Apparently, one of my father's apprentices even took the blade's name for a surname. That is a cheeky reference. I like that. Really? Karma? Sound formidable, that's for sure. 16 years ago, when my father was a visiting student here in London, he had this sword forever at his side. 'Cause even in the Japanese version, Von Karma from the first Ace Attorney, his name is Go Karma. And like, I like that. That's good. "16 years ago, when my father was a visiting student here in London, he had this sword forever at his side. Which is why it means so much to me that I have it by my side again now, too. And that is all thanks to you. It was an honor." Now, I have preparation to make for tomorrow. Perhaps I said a little too much. Kazuma, you've changed. No, Ryunosuke. I haven't changed at all. It's you who's changed. I can completely understand your resentment of Lord Van Zeeks given what's happened. But the fact is, those events in this case are, well, related. Is that what you want to say? How can you be so sure? What do you mean? Never mind. That man is the Reaper, and it's for that reason that the inspector was killed. I'm going to prove as much in court tomorrow, by whatever means necessary. I can't let you do that, Kazuma. I know you'll do what you have to as a lawyer. I'm sure I don't need to tell you, but I won't be taking any prisoners in the courtroom. I would expect nothing less.
until tomorrow then. The Old Bailey.
Yeah. You know, we should have already known where this place was. We've been here at least once before.
This place really is creepy, isn't it?
Well, being a dead room, it's probably full of the spirits of the dissected. But actually, there is a rather pleasing scent of roses in the air.
Oh my god. I want one of these. I want the little plague doctor one. That's so cute.
Well, being a dead room, the coroner probably needs a bold scent like that to mask the odor of death.
Iris? You think we could change the subject?
What was that?
Dr. Gory?
What?
That noise before.
I was sharpening my tools. I'd be dead meat if I didn't keep a perfectly keen edge on them.
Right.
When following the collagen fibers in the dermis, an expertly sharpened scalpel cuts like cheese. Would you like a demonstration? Oh, yes, please. I'd love to see.
These two characters' voices are gonna be very, very similar.
Then I think you'll do nicely.
Huh? No! No, I wouldn't do nicely at all. I mean, maybe some other time. Was that Tut? Or was that a Tut? Well, we came here to ask questions, so... I know we only saw her for like one bit earlier, but like, I like this character design a lot. We've actually met before. I'm a lawyer, if you remember.
You're not dead yet.
What?
So Mama said I wasn't allowed to cut you open. She's so strict about things like that.
Well, good. Dr. Scythe has some scruples, at least.
Oh dear. It looks like she's not interested in talking to us for the time being anyway.
Time being, you mean until we die? Hope that's a way off. Sorry, but wasn't planning on dying anytime soon. Surely there's some less drastic way of making her listen. Let's get her talking on the autopsy report itself. That's the wrong thing. Could I ask for your opinion about...
Don't forget, you're responsible for putting my mama in jail. Why should I help you?
Dr. Gory, we actually came here to ask you about this.
He was very good.
Good? Sorry?
His skin didn't snag my blade once, and very little mess. His joints dislocated easily, and his muscle tissue was a pleasure to work with.
We can skip those details. But there is one thing about the report that's caught my attention. Also, I don't know why, but there's something about characters that are very, like, macabre like this that I just, I enjoy.
There's one thing about the report that's caught my attention. You don't seem to have recorded a time of death.
That's not my fault.
I like it. I like her. Oh, that made me jump.
Then please, tell us what happened.
So, why doesn't this autopsy report include the victim's time of death then? It's really the most crucial detail.
I was told not to write it.
What? By whom?
Male Strongheart. The Lord Chief Justice. He came here.
Lord Strongheart came.
He said that from the witnesses' statements about the gunshot and the other evidence, it was obvious. The man clearly died at 5 p.m. on the 1st of November, when the gunshot was heard. But that's not the time of death you wrote on the report. You didn't write anything. Was there some reason you didn't include it?
Dr. Gory, you're hiding something under Lord Strongheart's instructions. And sooner or later, you're going to go the same way as your mother.
Give it here, then.
Hmm? She's scribbling so furiously.
There.
You've written...
What? What's she written? Tell us.
Indeterminate.
But...
What do you mean by that? Why was the time of death indeterminate?
When the specimen was brought in, it was still fresh. And so the time of death could easily... coincidence with the time the gunshot was heard.
Why are her animations, like, weirdly laggy? Have y'all been seeing that? Updated autopsy report. Like, for some reason, her animations sometimes just stutter a bit. Is my Switch melting? I hope not.
And so the time of death easily could have coincided with when the gunshot was heard. But there was one small discrepancy.
What discrepancy?
There was some fried fish in the pocket of the specimen's overcoat. And that fish had started to rot.
What?
If the victim liked fried fish, he presumably liked to eat it before it went off.
Well, yes. What are you really trying to say?
It's possible that someone tried to manipulate the apparent time of death.
Manipulate the... Is that even possible to do?
Theoretically, if you were to chill the body in ice, you could delay the onset of putrefaction. And if the overcoat wasn't on the body at the time...
Only the fish would have started to rot.
With today's science, it's not yet possible to determine if the body was chilled or not.
Today's science is advanced enough to let you freeze a corpse, it seems.
But surely... to chill a corpse like that would require an enormous electrical refrigerator. And I don't imagine many households in London are equipped with such a device. No, definitely not. But maybe in a factory or some other special places? I don't recall seeing any factories or such like on Fresno Street, though. I wonder, if the inspector's body had been chilled somehow, what might the actual time of death have been? I couldn't say for sure. But at the most, it might have been a day earlier.
No.
In other words, it would corroborate your previous deduction, Mr. Naruhodo. That Inspector Gregson was killed a day before his body was discovered, at a different location.
Did you inform Lord Strongheart of this possibility?
He simply said that there were no electrical refrigerators of that size in the vicinity.
Oh yes, one other thing. It's something the governor of Barclay Prison told us. He said that your mother, Dr. Scythe, is responsible for confirming the death of the professor after his execution.
The professor.
Apparently you always enjoyed listening to your mother's stories about her work, so... We're wondering if you might know something about what happened 10 years ago.
That's not all Mama did.
Sorry?
My mama carried out the autopsy of Clint Van Zieks as well.
I like that her eyes are sparkling. What? Really? Brother of Lord Van Zieks. The professor's final victim.
The idea of carrying out an autopsy on a member of the aristocracy was completely unthinkable back then.
Oh yeah, this was mentioned earlier, wasn't it?
But the detective in charge of the investigation insisted, and it was miraculously authorized. That detective being Inspector Gregson, of course.
Quite an accomplishment for one man.
That autopsy provided the vital clue needed to arrest the killer. And Mama was there for that historic event.
What does all this mean?
You know, that amazing autopsy happened right here in this very room. The professor and Clint Van Zieks. That's his skeleton over in the corner. They spent their final moments before their burial on that dissection table there. And so this lab, Mama's lab, was instrumental in some of the country's most important events.
Really is proud of her mother. I wonder if you'd tell us more about exactly what happened back then, Dr. Gory.
The professor's execution was Mama's first big case. She had to be in attendance at Barclay Prison's execution chamber and sign the certificate to confirm the convict's death. Mama's the best coroner in the world, you know. I was so proud of her.
The execution didn't actually take place.
No, and worse still, Mama actually helped with the jailbreak. I didn't want to know. Oh dear. You found out recently, you mean? I believed in her, in Mama, but now I wonder if I'm starting down the same path as her.
You mean because you omitted the time of death in this autopsy report? That's because Lord Strongheart forbade you from including it.
Just like Mama, I'm sure she was coerced by someone too.
Yes, that's my feeling as well.
There's no doubt there were powerful forces at play 10 years ago. The execution couldn't have been staged without a lot of people at the prison knowing about it. Obviously, the prison governor must have been in on it as well. And the big man with the little handcuffs, according to what he told us, he was tricked by the chief warder. He says he knew nothing about it. Of course he said that. I'd say the same thing.
Gosh, doing these two's voices back to back is like... It's not a situation of my throat is drying out, it's a situation of my jaw is starting to cramp. Because I have to like hold my jaw in a weird way to do the really high-pitched voices. Just who was behind that jailbreak all those years ago? You mentioned the autopsy of Clint Van Zieks.
It was at a time when carrying out autopsies of murder victims was very unusual. It's still not a practice that's observed in our country, even now.
Thank you for the hydrate, Nautilus.
It turned out that he was the professor's final victim, and when the autopsy was performed,
Also, Gory's voice is slowly creeping further and further up.
Mama was present, although only as the secondary assistant. The person leading the procedure was called Dr. John H. Wilson. That's right, my daddy. And there was one other person present, the primary assistant. He was a visiting student from the Far East.
Wait, a visiting student?
It must have been my father, Eugen Mikotoba.
I had no idea Professor Mikotoba had been involved in something so important.
But the outcome of that historic autopsy was the discovery of a vital piece of evidence that led to the capture of the professor.
That's how they came to identify Genshin Asogi as the infamous mass murderer. Do you happen to know anything about that piece of evidence? Can you tell us any more?
Would you like to see the records for yourself?
Would that be alright?
And what's the point of keeping records if people can't look at them? They're filed under V at the back of those cupboards, with the other records from the last decade.
Thank you. Let's see. Van Zeeks. That's strange.
What, Mr. Naruhodo?
They aren't here. There's nothing under Van Zeeks.
There must be.
Perhaps somebody took them away?
No. No one's allowed to take documents related to the professor case out of this room. But you're right. They're gone.
Well, when was the last time somebody looked at them? Do you remember?
It was... Oh yes, I remember now. It was 2 years ago. A consulting detective came one day, saying that he'd like to see the records.
No. You don't mean...
Erlock Sholmes was his name.
Deep down, I knew that was coming.
Do you think he stole the records? Oh no, surely not. Iris, that can't be right, can it?
Iris is over here like...
Shit, that's absolutely something Hurley would do.
Iris?
Bruno. I hope you don't mind, but
What is it, Iris?
I've just remembered something very important I have to do. I'm going to have to leave you now. Oh, this is very sudden, Iris. Well, we'll come with you then. Oh no, there's no need. You and Bruno can take your time here. Bye for now then. Good luck. Wait a minute, little girl. Me? I remember now. You've been here before, haven't you?
Have you, Iris?
Yes, 2 years ago, when that detective came. You were with him, weren't you? You were a living specimen then, too.
It's the way it usually works, yes.
Was I? I really don't remember. Anyway, sorry, but I must dash.
Wait, Iris. She's going to send Mikotoba pipe bombs. Absolutely.
I'll brew up a pot for you when you get home.
What's the matter with her? She's behaving really strangely all of a sudden. Well, in that case, we won't keep you any longer either.
It's been quite a while since I had any visitors. This really was fun. But next time you come, I'd prefer it if you were ready for dissection.
Can't make any promises, sorry. It's a bit strange that the records of Clint Van Zeeks' autopsy have disappeared. I think we've asked all we came to ask now. Let's have a closer look at this. Then again, let's not. At least not while she's armed. Okay, as much as I would love to keep going and, finish this investigation, I genuinely don't know how long this investigation's going to run for, so, we're gonna call it here. So, thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. Exclamation point Discord if you want to join the Discord. Exclamation point socials if you want to follow the VODs channel or my Blue Sky. Otherwise, give me just a moment and we'll find someone to raid. I'm starting to wonder if I'm gonna need a another break game between this case and the last case. Because I get the feeling that we're probably not going to finish this case tomorrow. I think Sin is finishing currently. Here, give me a sec. That's really funny. I just clicked into Sin's stream to just hear her going, I am finishing. That's really funny. Okay. DG's playing the new Grand Blue Fantasy game. That was genuinely really good. Last two cases are like... It feels like they're gonna be super, super long, but I also get the feeling that they're probably gonna be split cases like a couple of the other cases are, where it's like you do half of it in one and then the other half of it. The last two cases of Resolve are like 3 to 4 cases worth of stuff. How close am I to the end of case 4? Not... Am I like about halfway done, or am I not even halfway done at this point? I don't know, but anyway. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope to see you here tomorrow for more Ace Attorney. Just double checking. Trying to think. So tomorrow there will be a stream. Oh,